In today's video, we're going to take a look at how to divide decimals. Before we begin looking at dividing decimals, I want to just do a quick review of long division. So, if I give you a number like 1,350 and I want you to divide by 25, okay? We're going to set it up so that the 1,350 will go underneath, the 25 will go on the outside. So it's going to be 1,350 divided by 25. Okay. So I go ahead and set it up. Does 25 go into 1? No, 1 is not divisible evenly by 25. Okay. So then I look at 13. I look at this whole number. Okay, go with the next place. Does 25 go into 13? No. So I'm going to put a 0 there, just as a placeholder, or I can leave it blank. So then I look at 135. Are you able to divide 135 by 25? Yes. How many times it goes in? Well, 25 times 1 is 25. 25 times 2 is 25. I'm sorry, 50. 25 times 3 is 75. 25 times 4 is 100. 25 times 5 is 125. The next one is 25 times 6, which is 150, so that's too much. So I'm going to put a 5 here. Then I take the 5, multiply it by 25. Okay, so 5 times 25, as we said, is 125. So I'm going to write 125 underneath here, and then I'm going to subtract, take it away. So 135 minus 125 gives me an answer of 10. Then I need to bring down this other 0. And I can double check and make sure I made the right choice. Is 25 divisible by 10? No, it's less than 25. So, I'm sorry, is 10 divisible by 25? No, 10 is less than 25. So I'm going to bring down the 0. Does 25 go into 100? Yes. How many times? 4 times. 4 times 25 is 100, because 100 divided by 25 is 4. 4 times 25 is 100. I subtract, and I get a remainder of 0. So therefore, I can say that my answer is going to be 54. Which means I can check it by saying, does 25 times 54 equal 1,350? And when I check it, it does. Okay. Just as a reminder, I definitely want to see you doing out the division, but if you want to use your calculator to double check that you've got the right answer here, or that you're able to reverse it with the calculator on a homework assignment, please feel free to do so. Just as a reminder, not all numbers values come out evenly. So for example, if I want to do 127 divided by 3, I'm going to set it up 127 divided by 3. Okay. Does 3 go into 1? No. Does 3 go into 12? Yes. 4 times. So I'm going to put the 4 above the 2. I subtract the 12, left with 0. So then my next step is I bring down the 7. Does 3 go into 7? Yes. How many times? Well, it goes in twice. So 2 times 3 is 6. When I subtract, I'm left with a remainder of 1. Now I could stop there and say 42 remainder 1, but what we're going to begin doing is putting a decimal place and putting a 0. Because remember, 127.0 is the same thing as 127. I haven't changed the value at all, but it allows me another place to bring down the 0. So what I need to remember to do is take the, once I put this decimal place here, I'm going to bring it straight up. So kind of, you see how all these columns sort of match up? The same thing with the decimal. The decimal is going to match up right there. So I bring down the 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. Subtract the 1. I can bring down a 0 again. Okay. 10. I'm going to see the same pattern repeating. So my answer will be 42.3 repeating. Okay. So this is basically beginning to get into the world of decimals. So let's go ahead the key part with decimals is remember that you cannot divide by a number with decimals as it is written. So what do I mean by this? Okay, I'm going to show you an example with decimals first, and then I'm going to show you what to do in a case if you have dividing by something with zeros. So, for example, if I want to know what 124 and 2/10 is when you divide it by 3, I'm going to set it up the same way. The 3 is on the outside, 124.2 is on the inside. Okay. Now you'll notice this number here cannot have any decimal places in it, which is okay because it's 3. I can have a decimal place here, at least to begin with. What I'm going to do is right away bring this decimal place straight up. And then I'm going to do long division like normal. Okay? So 3 doesn't go into 1, but 3 does go into 12. So I'm going to put 4 there. 4 times 3 is 12. Subtract, left with 0. Bring down the 4. 3 goes into 4 once. 3 times 1 is 3. Subtract. Put a 1. I'm going to bring down the 2. 3 goes into 12. 4 places. 4 times 3 is 12. Subtract. I'm left with 0. Now this kind of works out in the sense that my remainder is 0. If I did have another number here, I would have to add a 0 here, bring down the 0 again, and keep going. Okay. But right now I can say that my answer is going to be 41.4. Let's look at what to do with the same problem. Okay, let's say for example I have 124.2, but instead of dividing it by 3, I want to divide it by 0.3, 3/10. I'm still going to set up the same problem the same way. So it's going to be 124.2, and I'm going to divide by 0.3. But because I can't have a decimal place on this side, what I'm going to do is multiply by a factor of 10. So I'm going to move the decimal place here to kind of get rid of it. And the same thing here, move it here. So my decimal place will kind of go right there. Okay, so I'm going to do a little loop. So if I move it here, I move it here, and then bring it up after that. Okay, and then I'll divide by normal. So give me a second, and I'll be right back. So as you notice, the numbers come out the same, but in this case, my answer will be 414. Because the decimal is at the very end with nothing following it, I can just drop that decimal to get 414. Let's look at one more example. Let's say I wanted to do 112,000. Well, let's do 12.312. And I want to know what happens when I divide by 8. Let's change this with the decimal. Let's change this to 0.08, for example. Okay, so I'm still going to put the 12.312 and divide by 0.08. Using the process, I'm going to move the decimal place over 2 spaces because I want to get rid of it completely, and do the same thing here. So basically what I am doing is doing 1,231 and 2/10 divided by 8. So I'm rewriting the problem. Okay, now on the next slide I'm going to do a little explanation why this works. I'm going to divide 8 doesn't go into 1, but 8 does go into 12 one time. Subtract the 8, left with 4, bring down the 3. How many times does 8 go into 43? Well, 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. I'm going to subtract the 3. Bring down the 1. How many times does 8 go into 31? It'll be 3 times. Subtract 24. Left with 7. Bring down the 2. 8 goes into 72 9 times. Okay. What did I forget to do? Well, I have a decimal place here that I forgot to bring right up, so I can fill that in. So I can say my answer to 12 and 312 thousandths divided by 8 hundredths is going to give me an answer of 153 and 9/10. Okay, let's talk a little bit about why this swoop works. Hopefully you remember a little bit about decimals. If I wanted to know what 3/4 was in terms of how many eighths, I could multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same value. So 4 times 2 gives me 8, 3 times 2 would give me 6. So 3/4 is the same thing as 6/8. So hopefully you remember a little bit about equivalent fractions for this to make sense. If I had something like 12.01 and I wanted to divide by 3/10, another way of writing this is as a fraction. To write it as 12.01 divided by 0.3, because all a fraction bar really means is dividing. So like up here with 3/4, I have 3 parts, I have 3 sections that I'm going to try and divide into 4 parts. Okay? Which is the whole. So down here, knowing that I want to get rid of a decimal, I can choose to multiply by a factor of 10. So 0.3 times 10 will give me an answer of 3. If I do that to the denominator, I would also need to do it to the numerator. So that would be 120 and 1/10. Which, in a sense, if I were to set it up as 12.01 divided by 0.3, if I do the little swoop method, that's exactly what I would get. 3 on the outside and 120.1 on the inside. So anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. We're going to need to practice using this idea of division, particularly with decimals, a little bit further, but hopefully this will be a start in the right direction.